A lot of people ask me who should consider mediating pre-suit and pro se. I will tell you it is not for everybody. There are a couple of kinds of cases I won't do. The first one that comes to my mind always is cases of domestic abuse or cases of domestic violence. I'm not going to say they can't be mediated. I believe that they can. I will say they should not be mediated pro se. I believe that somebody who's gone through that path needs an attorney in the room to level the playing field, whether they do it as a collaborative process or ultimately a litigated process, which unfortunately is usually the case. I think those people really should be represented through the process. Even with representation, it's a difficult thing to do for a victim of abuse. There are a lot of reasons, and I don't want to turn this into a session that deals with that specifically, but things to consider are when you mediate, you need to be able to identify what your needs and your goals are, what it is that you think is best for you out of the divorce settlement, and what you think is best for your children. Oftentimes, an abused person can't do that and separate their identity or their needs apart enough from their abuser. So it makes it difficult for them to negotiate effectively on their behalf. And also, obviously, the amount of intimidation that was involved, or how long ago it occurred, how much influence is still being exerted over the victim. These are the things that go into weighing that out for somebody who's abused as to whether or not they should even mediate at all. As I said earlier, every case will be mediated before you get to a final hearing, but there are exceptions, and domestic violence certainly can be, the mediation requirement can be waived if somebody feels they can't do it or they don't want to face their abuser. The other case I don't generally like to mediate, especially not pre-suit. I would prefer to do it further along the line, is the case where you have two parties that have very different understanding of the financial aspect of their marriage. And this happens all the time. The typical case, although I've seen it in reverse, believe it or not, twice this year, but the typical case is you have the wife who has not worked and has been raising the children, and the husband who has the business or the job, and he handles the finances and she handles the home front, and then boom, you get to a point where they decide they want to divorce, and she has no idea where the money is, how much money they're making, whether she lived on an allowance or, you know, just had the credit card to run free. In either case, you have one spouse who really does not know what the assets are. That can still be mediated generally if there's a very high level of trust between the parties. But in divorce cases, that's not usually the case. Once you get to the point of divorcing, that level of trust has been broken on one level or another. And I really strongly believe that those people, those parties, need a certain amount of a more formalized discovery process to put those documents on the table. Now, if they do it with two attorneys in a collaborative setting, they're still exchanging a lot more formal documentation of what the finances are. And they're doing it with the subspecialties, the professional specialties like a financial advisor or a forensic accountant to parse out and level the playing field on what the parties know about the marital assets and what they are worth. So those are the two main categories I say don't lend themselves to what I do for a living, although they can be mediated later on in the process with a lot of things put into place to take care of the parity between the parties. Then who should mediate? Pretty much everybody else can mediate. It doesn't even matter how much you have in assets, or, you know, are there a lot of 401ks, or are there issues relating to the property. It doesn't matter how complex a case is in terms of its finances. It only matters whether or not the parties are pretty much in the same place in terms of their knowledge and can deal with each other fairly, respectfully. Even though there's anger, even though there's pain, they can still sit across a table and work out agreements because they're both looking at what's best for their future lives together and what's best for their children. And if they're putting their children at the forefront, as I also do what Bob does, I have them put a picture on the table of the kids, absolutely, so that they always remember what it is they're doing it for, what's the most important thing, and what is always the best arrangement that will be the best for the kids and make it easiest for them to continue to parent those children for a long time in the future.